developments proposed it. So a couple of things. Tonight we have Mr. Cyrus here. He's with Camden Homes. He's going to be giving you guys a presentation on what they're proposing to do for the area. I'm going to go and let him do his presentation, and then we'll take some questions. If there's anything he can answer, he'll try to answer. If not, we have Jeff Armstrong over here from our planning and zoning. He's the director of planning and zoning. We also have our city manager, Cliff Keeley, over here. So between all of us that are here, hopefully we can give you guys all the answers you need, okay? So we're going to turn it over to Cyrus.
Good evening, everybody. So I am Cyrus with Camden Homes. I'm one of the owners of the company. This is Claudia Peters. She also helps me with a lot of the development side of our business. So Camden's been around since 1998. It was started by my father and another business partner. Currently, we build about 400, 450 homes a year. I think this year we've got for 2020 about 480 units planned, mostly single family. We also develop about 3,000 lots in North Texas. We're active in Dallas and Houston, Texas. And so this project, we've always wanted to do a project in Mesquite. And so the owner of this project, he doesn't live here, he's not from Texas. He is proposing for us to rezone his project, which is what we're currently trying to do. It's currently zoned retail commercial. And so what we're proposing is to take it from a retail commercial zoning and put it on townhome zoning, which is a planned development. Meaning if we do get approved for zoning this month, we would not be able to go in there and put a retail or a commercial spot. We would only really be able to put a townhome type residence there. Owner occupied is what we're going for. Originally when we met last time, we had planned for 48 units. We actually just decreased that to 45 to allow for some more green space. So right now we actually have less units than when we met last time. So, and there's gonna be some more green space. We had to widen the road a little bit as well too. But what we're proposing are basically 45 units that are comprised of just triplexes, 3 units attached in one building with common walls between basically each side of the units. So we haven't really decided on the specific design of the interior houses. Right now we just have a footprint of the units. We're proposing on Town East a masonry screening wall that the city of Mesquite already has their own required design requirements that we have to meet. So we can't go in there and put, X, Y, and Z. We actually have to meet certain structural requirements that the city requires. And so that will be along Town East, and then along the backs we would have where I guess along the alley on the north side, if you will, that would be fencing. Basically wood fence. Okay, and so we're just basically proposing between the alley where the yards would be and those type of things, that would be a wood fence. And so,
how far away from the alley are you gonna put that fence?
well, it's gonna be on the lot line. So it wouldn't be on, so there's an alley, so obviously it would have to go up into closer to the alley.
Yeah.
Up to the lot line of the property.
Probably 2 or
Obviously,
3 feet.
yeah, and so that'll be on, basically it's gonna be on the property line. We were not gonna be able to go outside of the property line or into the public right of way. That alley is not owned by us, that alley is owned by the city of Mesquite, right? And so what we're proposing is to just basically build on what is currently on the property line. Now on the side of, I think, it's Rustown, right? We've been requesting not to put that stone fence. I think what we would be doing is just maybe either a wood fence or a half fence. That way we would be able to, we don't want to cause too much. We want to be able to see there's going to be a park on that side, on that hard corner. We took part of that unit out. So we'll probably propose like a gazebo or some sort of a dog park, but we haven't decided which amenity we're going to put in which location, but it is currently zoned green space. And we're going to be doing a masonry product on the majority of the units. On the back side of some of these units, there will be some siding and those type of things. Yes.
Who would maintain the wooden fence, or the fence structure and the masonry after it's built?
That's going to be maintained by the unit owners, the HOA, right? So there is going to be a private HOA that maintains the open space, as well as the dog park in those areas. Those, unless the city decides to accept those as public parks, which typically they do not, it'll be maintained and owned by the members of the HOA. It won't be open to the public.
So when this masonry fence
starts eroding, as it will, because of the soil here, then the HOA will take care of that. Is that in writing somewhere?
That'll be in the HOA declaration docs, and so typically, the way that it works is, you know, an HOA is going to be created. There are certain restrictions and requirements for the HOA. We would be putting in money when the purchaser buys the house, and then the HOA requires them to basically put in reserves, because as everybody knows, over time, nobody wants that surprise invoice that says you owe $10,000 for your portion of the masonry fence. So what happens is, over time, every month, they're putting away a certain dollar amount to maintain or manage that fence. And so that's typically, we don't do HOAs long-term for our company. We outsource those to other groups.
Will that be a local group, the HOA owners, or will that be?
Yeah, they're local, absolutely. And so
Yeah, they're made up of the fence.
well, if it's gonna be professionally managed, which we at least try and push for that at the beginning, they typically go out, you know, once a month, check the property, write up violations, they'll do notice of violations and those type of things, try and get the residents to react. And then also if there's any fines and things like that, they handle that. We don't like to be the police, we're the ones who sold them a house, right? Well, our job is really to help build that experience of them moving into the unit.
Yeah, my comment was, I've got friends that are in HOAs and they're administered by people located in California.
No, our group is not. So there's local representation. And, you know, the ultimate goal is, obviously, I think everybody can attest to this, is HOAs are only successful as the members that comprise of it. So if everybody decides, I really don't care what happens in my neighborhood, then typically you see, you know, the culture erode inside that community. Our goal is to obviously not be, to find people inside the community that are gonna try and promote and preserve their values of their property.
Your company is going to maintain it then, right?
We do not manage or maintain HOAs, no, sir.
Well, you said we, who
Well,
would manage? You said it's gonna be
So
independent.
typically, at the very beginning of the process, we will take it all the way through till the last unit is sold. And so over a period of time, what you're hoping to do is get members of the community to sign up for the HOA to be active. Everybody is gonna have to pay HOA dues. They sign that when they purchase their units. But the people who are going to be involved in managing that is a completely, I mean, so you can have a professionally managed HOA, or you can have, you know, a locally managed HOA. The ones that are locally managed are just gonna be managed by people who live inside the units, the 45 people. They have to live typically inside one of the units.
You guys have any information on the median price of these?
So, I mean, our goal is gonna be about $250 per unit. We'll see kind of how the market comes out. I mean, I think one of the questions that came up was, why are we not doing single-family houses versus townhomes? You know, I don't have control over the sales price of what the seller has for the land, right? And so I have to make sure I can maximize the amount of value that I get from buying the land, because he wants to obviously make a profit. We have to make sure that what's considered a lot price, I've got to get the most amount of units that I can. We don't do multifamily or apartments, and so we were actually hoping to get closer to 50. We have had to take a step back. We've lost almost 5 units, and so there's profit that we've had to lose on that. But when that happens, that means I have to raise the price per unit to cover that. And so if we go down to, let's say, 30, 35 units, you're gonna start pushing the prices even higher, and then it might be unaffordable. It may not compound for those next questions. That's a county question, because I have no control of it. No, sir, I have no idea. If you have a homestead exemption, it won't matter, because your property taxes are unfortunately gonna go up.
What about resale value?
It would go up.
Why?
Why? Because you're talking about new product typically. When new product typically goes in those areas, typically house values increase. That's typically what we see in the neighborhoods that we build in, right? I don't know the house value specifically of your house, but that's typically what we see as an experience. I'm sure there's plenty of data you could probably get with the city manager in their office, but at the same time, I don't control anything outside of our community. I don't have any control. I do care. That's why I'm gonna build good product. If I really didn't care, I would go in there and tell the guy to build a retail strip, which I don't have control over either. It's his project. And so if I didn't care, I mean, the city could tell you this, I could go in there, if I got it zoned and build whatever quality product I wanted, the cities don't have control over that. We go in there and build great product. If you go to any of our communities, I am not ashamed to drive anybody through them. I would happily drive anybody to any of our communities.
Where do you have these communities?
So we build as far east as Terrell, Texas. We're active in Waxahachie and Forney. We're in Dallas as well too. We've got 2 or 3 communities in Dallas. We're also active in Farmersville, Anna, far west is Fort Worth, Waxahachie, Red Oak. I'm sorry?
Plano or any?
Well, so the issue with Plano is that you start building a new house, new construction in there, you're not gonna really find new stuff under 350. Our sweet spot, I mean, when we started at stuff at like 175 years ago, our lowest sales price typically right now is 225. We stay under 300,000. We focus on that sweet spot, and Plano is just too expensive for what we're trying to do. And it's very competitive though right now.
And I apologize, it came a little bit late, but my interest, I don't see in Mesquite, I mean, I'm just saying, a community like in McKinney where you have communities for 55 plus, and they're nice duplex homes, and they're about 260. I mean, I'd like to see that in Mesquite.
Well, so we're gonna be age
Let me
targeted.
stop for just a
Go
second.
ahead.
He doesn't know what we know.
No.
We've had a bunch of 55 plus communities approach us recently.
Right.
So you say it, I'm telling you right now, we've already have a couple of groups coming in to do just that. And it's it's variable. And what we would do, and I'm sorry, I know you're focused on your deal, but everybody needs to hear the full lay of the land.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, and who are you with? I mean, what's your-
I'm Robert Nicholas, I'm on the city council. It's okay. That's right, I don't take offense. You know, I'd rather no one know me so I can go to the grocery store. It's okay. It's all right, but let me explain. That is, 55 plus is one of the lowest and most needed uses in Mesquite.
Right.
For people to move from homes when they can no longer take care of their yards, or they can no longer take care of a large single-family structure, to downsize into, a 55 plus. So we know that. We've had several groups approach us, and we're in the midst of working on those. It's not gonna be a low-run, assisted living, single-story, everybody packed together. It's gonna be 55 plus community activities, all of that stuff together, just so y'all know that. So you say it, you say we need it, we've got groups coming in doing exactly that.
But I'd like to have one where, you have an option to have apartments if you want, or you
Okay.
can actually have duplex homes, beautiful duplex homes.
You got it.
And plus a clubhouse, and
You-
plus everything else.
In fact, there's one that's proposing something very similar to that would be trying to go very close to my house. I live off a Trip,
Okay?
so that's exactly what they're proposing to put, and I'm gonna have a community meeting for my neighborhood on the 6th of February about exactly that. So whatever design you were thinking of in your head, that's real close to exactly what they were talking about. Variability, some would just be an apartment for someone that couldn't have a yard at all. Some that would have bungalows or small homes or duplexes, things like that.
That's-
And I'm getting over a cold, so if I sniffle a lot, I apologize. Anyway, but it's coming.
Ma'am?
I just want to ask you, where in Terrell, I don't see it on your map here, is the one that's a planned project?
So we're actually in the process of going through zoning on the north side of Terrell now. Some of the streets are Eastgate, Westgate in Terrell, Texas. We've built off. I can give you a list of houses that we've built in that area.
Or
We-
similar to what you're building up here?
Well, no, because unfortunately those were single-family homes. These are townhomes. It would be very similar in the finish out on the outside, but they're gonna be brick. They're gonna have stone, very similar to what we have in Terrell. And I think we've got some renderings here that we've got on the inside of these, so you guys can kind of see what we are proposing.
Have you built any other multi-unit
Right, I'm
like
just
this?
looking at
Yeah,
it.
we have,
Because
absolutely.
all I'm seeing in this brochure is single-family homes.
Absolutely. So we built a project in Louisville that I'd be happy to send a link for. We talked about it last time. It's on the website. That are townhomes. We bought the second half of that position from a group that went defunct. So their project is all siding. We could have built siding on ours, we built all masonry. It's all brick and stone. We build stuff that's going to stand the test of time because I am from Dallas, I was born and raised here. I want to be able to say I am proud of what we built.
What's the square footage?
Could I ask?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. You mentioned the meeting last time. Many of us didn't know about the
Sure.
meeting last time, so if you could limit your comments on, you covered it last time because we didn't hear it. I'd appreciate just covering the answer.
Is there something you
He's
want me-
asking you to act like there wasn't a meeting last time and to assume everyone doesn't know the things that you said last time.
Absolutely, so, not a problem. So is there something specifically that I missed? Sorry.
I wasn't here last time.
I've pretty much gone over a lot of those same things. I think there were concerns about schools. I think one of the questions, that came up last time was a concern about schools and what our impact would be on the school district. I think they ran some numbers on that, and so just to address that.
Yeah, I got the thing on the schools for you guys, just so you know, for 25 townhomes, it averages out to about 8 students. City manager, in my direction, he checked with our superintendent. They said they know what this project is. They said this project would have no impact on their schools. They'd be able to handle the students with no problem.
And let me specify that. You're not building 25 townhomes, right? You're building 42?
Thank you.
45.
45. Just,
It's a little different.
hang on, I'm trying to make sure that you've got the correct information.
Okay.
All right, so at 42 townhomes, generally speaking, everything averages out. Some homes there'll be no kids, some homes there'll be more than one kid. So you just do an average, and the multiplier for townhomes, and it's just what you plan on is 0.4 for every townhome. So at 42 units, you're going to have 16 on average kids that'll come out of that, which is the equivalent, and it's 0.4. Single family homes, like what y'all live in this area, it's a little higher at 0.5, a multiplier. Single family homes in a single family subdivision actually per house produce slightly more kids that go to the school than a townhouse for various reasons, but it's not by much. So with 42 townhomes, you're looking at 16 kids that go into the school district. Now that's distributed among 13 grades. So your average per grade is about 1.1 kid per grade. Now with the Choice High School that's going on, they're pulling several hundred kids from North Mesquite. So what you're looking at is about 4.4 kids that from this development on average would go to that high school, and they're pulling several hundred of them out in order to go to that Choice High School. That's the average. That's what you can expect. Does that help? And that's straight out. So, yes.
What about other infrastructure things like roadways? I know Kensington needs a lot of work.
What?
Kensington Road
The street.
The road.
is a mess. It needs a lot of work.
Okay,
And
so
what about water pressure? I know my water pressure is relatively low in the shower.
Okay. So I don't know the water pressure into a particular subdivision, and I'm sorry that I don't know that offhand. Our city manager is here and he's heard that. The infrastructure for the streets, they will pay something called roadway impact fees. They're gonna be paying at the building permit phase a certain amount of money that goes to help fix the roads in the area. Not just Kensington, but Emerald, Rustown, all of those other roads, and they pay a fee to do that. And if I'm not mistaken, you're not asking for that to be waived. You're planning on paying those fees. So that's what you try and do. You say, you have I'm sorry? Yes, sir?
I said, it's a joke to me because I don't see any streets being repaired. I don't see how their money would help anything
I was just
because the
saying
city has to do it.
I was just trying to explain what they're paying for because he asked that question. The question is, everyone who builds any structure in Mesquite, whether it's a jack-in-the-box, whether it's a single-family home, an apartment complex, anything, pays impact fees. And those impact fees go into a fund that is supposed to help build roads and fix roads.
How do you decide that? How do you decide?
The city staff determines, and we had a bond program, and the city council votes on particular projects to go forward. And so we've had a $125 million bond program where there have been a bunch of streets that were fixed in the first phase, and we've moved on to the second phase, and a bunch of other streets have been determined to be fixed in that next phase. And we're going all over town, different roads are gonna be fixed. We try and determine which roads need to get fixed first, second, third, how much it's gonna cost, when they'll go. I'll give you an example. If you go across Motley, Emerald was fixed all the way to Range. So, roads are getting fixed. Kensington hasn't been fixed, but, I'm sorry? I agree. So, but to say that no roads are getting fixed is incorrect. We have a bond program that are fixing roads. And it was based on how much money the voters voted for those bond programs versus how much the roads cost. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and defend whether you're happy or not with it. I think we could do a whole lot more to fix the roads, myself. But that's the answer to the question. It's not that we're not fixing any roads, we're fixing a whole lot of roads. And I think the city manager could go through that. We're starting on the second set of roads to be fixed. And a lot of them are near Blackwood Park, Eastbrook. Those streets are all gonna get completely replaced. Choctaw's gonna get completely replaced. Streets in the Galloway neighborhood, Clary, Rollingwood Hills are gonna be completely replaced. Kenny, I don't know which streets in this neighborhood are slated to be completely replaced or repaired. Do you know which streets out here are? Okay, so streets are getting fixed and we're trying to fix them as quickly as possible.
So when
And
he said he's paying a fee.
he's paying a fee.
But
Same
it's
with
not
the
gonna go
others do.
to our neighborhood, it's gonna just go to whoever needs to be fixed. It isn't a general. I mean, at first, I thought you were saying it went to our neighborhood, and then you say, no, it goes into a general pot, and then whoever needs it the most.
So there's an answer with two sentences to that answer, ready?
Okay, got it.
Yes, you're correct, it goes into a general fund.
Okay.
However, it's not fair for us to fix one part of town and not the other part of town. So we try and spread out the repairs to these roads to all different parts of town.
Right.
Because your roads need to get fixed just as much as anybody else's neighborhood needs to get fixed. I have Hollowbin in my neighborhood that needs to get fixed. We've got streets on Canada, the Canada Elementary area that absolutely need to get fixed. Northridge needs to get fixed.
I understand.
We've got a ton
Why
of
are
them,
we
so
talking
we,
about his fee if it doesn't apply to us? I mean,
Well, it
we
kind
need to
of
move
applies.
on and talk about something else.
Yeah.
So,
Amen.
if I could, I'm Bruce Archer, Mayor.
Sure.
Streets are always a big issue for all of us. We're here to talk about this particular development tonight.
Right.
We just had a policy retreat this last weekend, where we did some deep dives about streets. And so one of the things that we're talking about here in the next few months of screen is I want us to have a community citywide meeting that everybody's invited to come to talk about exactly where we're at on streets, the good, the bad, the ugly, try to give you an idea of where we're going the next 2, 3, 4 years with the bond program, as well as how we operate day in, day out with repairing streets. So we need to address that, but I didn't want to get too far off before we're talking about tonight. Those are big issues that we're going to be attacking, so you all get to come give direction on those issues.
Mr. Archer, just real quick, I just want to say one thing about tonight's meeting. The developer has given some of his time to be here to discuss his project with you. And so if we could focus as much of the meeting now on his project, I guarantee you that Mr. Green and I don't want to speak for Mr.
No, I'll be
Butler,
here.
We'll all be here afterwards to talk about all of these other global issues, as long as y'all want us to be here. But I want to be considerate of the developer's time, and really talk about the things that that he's trying to do just down the street from here.
And he's here, so you guys get to have input and not just be told what's gonna happen.
right.
Yes, sir. How they gonna determine whether you get zoned for that or not?
So there's a zoning hearing that's coming up in a couple weeks.
I know, who has the we go for it, have you picked on it, or?
I would direct that question to the city manager.
Won't you repeat their question? So
I'm sorry,
Question.
his question is, will he be allowed to have any input at the upcoming zoning meeting? And I'll let council member answer that.
Sure. So there's gonna be 2 more phases of the project. There's gonna be a planning and zoning commission meeting on the 27th. At that meeting, that's when the planning and zoning commission will hear the project, and they'll decide if they wanna recommend it for the city council to approve. On February 3rd, the city council is gonna have this on the agenda. At that point in time, we will have, public input. You guys can come speak on it, as well as any item that's ever on our council agenda. You can come talk about anything. If it's on the council agenda, or even if it's not, you just wanna get up and talk about some issue you have, you can do that. So if you wanna see more details, if you wanna come make some comments on the project that, directed toward the city council, to let us know your feelings on it, you can definitely do that. You wanna come speak to the planning and zoning commission and let them know that your feelings on the project, you can do that as well. All that details are taken down, they're all recorded, they're all part of the record, so we do get all that information as well. So if you can't make it to one, but you can make it to the other, feel free to come out. We wanna get as much input as possible, because we wanna make sure we're doing right by you guys.
I got a question.
So with the current zoning.
Okay, so right now, we actually did some research, I just learned this myself tonight. Apparently, this property actually is considered zoned for office commercial. So actually, right now, if someone wanted to go build an office building, and then they could do that, so you could have a 2 or 3 story office building just pop up right there.
Or a convenience store.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. If it's something that would apply for office, it could happen. So that's kind of a worrisome thing, because an office, it opens up all kinds of possibilities there. So, there's nothing the city council can do about it. If someone wanted to go build that in there, all they have to do is file their permits, and they can start building.
Can you describe this a little bit better? Because I don't think everybody understands what that means.
Yeah.
Y'all understand what Councilman Green's saying when he's saying that it's zoned a particular way, and they wouldn't have, if they wanted to do what the zoning allows right now, they wouldn't have to get any permission from anyone. I want to make sure that everyone understands that. The second thing is, because I've seen a lot of stuff on Facebook, I don't want to talk down to anybody, I just want to make sure everyone understands. I see a lot of stuff on Facebook like, why is the city building these townhouses? We're not building these townhouses. This is a private property owner who owns property, and cities have every square inch of their land zoned for one thing or the other. And if the zoning allows a certain use, and they walk into the building permit office and they say, I want to build an office, or I want to build a limited service fuel station, or I want to build so-and-so, we can't stop them, even if y'all are calling me up at 3 a.m. screaming at me saying, stop them from doing it. And I would be very sympathetic, because I don't want some intensive, yucky use right next to McDonald Middle School that ties up and kills that street and snarls it up. I don't want that for y'all. But it's important for everyone to know that right now, today, without any action taken by the city, they can do a whole lot with that property, and we don't have the legal right to stop them.
It doesn't matter about the traffic over there, how much traffic is gonna be, the kids getting on.
Oh, it's already there.
There.
Yeah, put a gas station.
I didn't hear the first part.
Where?
Let's say everything goes through.
No, not if we don't take it in factor, we can't stop it. I'm sorry.
Michelle were to just not go.
Sorry.
What's your recourse?
Yes, ma'am.
Recourse against.
You have all these properties built and you're not able to get these people aren't picking them up.
I guess we got too many conversations about it.
You can't get down the street because the school buses, the people are parking on both sides of the street. And
Right,
the
right.
main street is blocked up, kids are just coming out of nowhere. And so, I can see somebody can feel, it looks like to me it should be a limit of what can be there because of the traffic and safe for your neighbors and your kids.
So what's your question?
No, I know what you're
The
saying.
question was, he said, anybody can build anything, and I was about, does the city not take into factor about traffic? And
That's
I'm
your
not
name.
gonna hurt you.
Traffic doesn't change the desire of the person who's purchased the property.
No, this is what I'm worried about. stop someone from going in and building there what they're allowed to do right now. We can't stop it. It's not that we wouldn't take it into consideration. It's not that we wouldn't think that it was awful that somebody put a whole lot of office or a convenience store or something there. We would. The city council would be like, gosh, that's awful. I'm sorry that happened. But by law, what I'm telling you is we couldn't stop them. It's not that we would consider it and go, I don't care, go ahead and put that traffic there. Right now, they can put a whole lot there, and we have no authority to stop that.
We look at end up like the airport when they had all that chaos out there when I first moved here in 84, and that man got hit out there. He ended up suing them, and he ended up winning too, because the traffic was out there so bad, and you couldn't understand which was going, which way was going, and he ended up winning.
The ski airport?
DFW.
Okay,
You
that,
create a maze or something, and somebody's trying to just run down there, and you got to run down somebody, I mean, to me,
well, ma'am, what you're worried about, and that's why I'm kind of stressed about this, because I'm worried about that too. That's what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is such an intensive use going on that corner that it'll be chaos for McDonald Middle School. Hey y'all, this is super important. This is why I'm stressed out about this. If a big office use or a convenience store and a Red Nails number 9 and limited, like a gas station went there and the kiddos were crossing the street and hanging out there, those sort of things, I think that would be an absolute disaster. And what I don't want us to do, look, whatever y'all want us to do, we're gonna do. That's what this city council is about. We're here to listen to you, and we're here to effectuate what you want done. But what I don't want is I don't want a mistake to be made. It's not gonna stay an empty field. The choice is not empty field or townhouses. If anyone here says it's either townhouses or empty field, a terrible mistake will be made. Because right now, without ever going to us or asking us anything, they can go build a big office use, commercial, with 10 to 20 times as much traffic as a townhouse use would be. And with the kids crossing the street from McDonald and hanging out there. And so what I'm afraid of, and I'll admit I'm a little stressed tonight about it, is people saying, I want an empty field. Y'all need to leave this an empty field. And then we say, we don't want your townhouse product, go away. And then you see bulldozers going out there 3 weeks from now, and you're calling us up and you're like, what the heck did you let them do? We didn't let them do anything. Right now, tomorrow morning, the developer could go and pull permits and start working on that property. And it would be a lot worse than a townhouse.
Who
And I
owns
just
the
don't.
property today?
What?
Who owns the property today?
An out-of-state investor, he doesn't even live in Dallas. The question was, is who owns the property now? I do not own the property, right? So the out-of-state investor has offers, and he has the right, as he's mentioned, to literally go in there and put a car wash, to put a convenience store, to put whatever he wants. He doesn't even have to ask the city for permission. He can literally just go pull a building permit. To my understanding, it would get approved, right? I am trying to actually talk about taking it from commercial retail and adding basically a townhome zoning component, so it can only be built townhomes.
Are you, so you're working with the investor?
Yeah, I have basically, I'm working as a partnership to basically take his property, buy it from him, put it into our group so that we can put townhome zoning. And I don't own it right now.
But you're gonna buy it.
I have to, absolutely. I mean,
Before you get started, obviously.
my purchase is specific to getting zoning approved. I have zero desire to get into commercial retail. It's not my business. He has, candidly, he has people who are interested in doing that for him. Evidently, well, that's a whole different conversation that candidly you guys can have with him if I don't get my zoning approved, because that's just not what I'm here for, right?
So you need this approved before you'll buy it.
Absolutely, but he's not gonna just sit on it. He's already, his goal is to sell it, and right now it's a good market. right? And so, yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Just, if you have something to say, raise your hands before you say it, because people have been wanting to speak, and when somebody else asks a question, so this lady right here's had her hand up several
Mine
times.
is about construction,
Yes,
let's say
ma'am.
everything goes through. What is the time frame from the beginning, from making the streets, to starting the building? And that's part of the question, but once you do that, you're gonna have all kinds of stuff going on, dust, big trucks coming in. What compensation, or what will be done for the people who back up on Owens, for all the dust, for all,
Sorry, I'm so sorry.
yeah, I wasn't sure who I'm asking.
No, I'll answer that question. Our construction regulations limit the time of day in which they can start and what time they have to end. And we also have to make sure that they take care of any dust or anything that might go over their property line. So our construction inspectors make sure that all of those rules are being taken care of. So we have inspectors that double check to make sure that they are following our rules.
And that's for them, but starting with the streets and everything?
The streets and everything, yeah,
Okay,
because
and
he's
then-
gonna build the street that goes
Okay.
through there as well.
So that would also, someone will come in to make sure the provisions for the public water, the sewage, and everything is I guess what I'm asking is, you're gonna have stuff coming in. Is Rustown at any time going to be where nobody can access it, because you're gonna have trucks coming in? And I'm asking this because my grandkids walk to school.
It would take us a special reason if they were maybe to connect a water line, but they have to keep the street open. There may be a certain part of the day where they barricade one half off or the other, but for emergency access, we don't allow anyone to close a street for more than 15 minutes.
So is it 5 days, 6 days?
No,
Building?
Hour, 15 minutes.
No, when you start, it's 5 days, 6 days?
Oh.
Monday through Friday?
Yeah, I mean, that's a city regulation.
Our city regulations allow construction Monday through Saturday.
Time
And
from
I
7?
believe 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., somewhere right in there. But we also, if it's up close to a resident, most of the contractors we deal with don't work that late into the night unless there is some extraordinary thing, and we will ask them to contact you as residents and say, this is an exception, and we're gonna be making some noise. And so, because we're so close to a neighborhood, we're gonna make sure that they are as least impactful on the homeowners as possible.
My card has my number on it and my email. So if you ever had a complaint during the construction or development process, you have direct access to myself as well as Claudia. My guys don't work weekends, right? Saturdays, I mean, they take off. Now, that might be a flooring guy may go in there and try and punch out some stuff during the day, but we don't work. And if we did, and if you guys catch us, you report it to him and then we're fined, right? So we're not in the process of trying to get in trouble, right? We're trying to build good partners. We're trying to be good neighbors.
Well, that's
I
why I was
promise.
asking, everything is gonna be, the beginning, when you start, road grading, getting everything leveled, you're gonna have field mice, you're gonna have all kinds of things going everywhere, and it's gonna be going over to Owens. It's like, oh, look, here's a house, let's go jump in there. And so what precautions is taken before you come in? I mean, you can only do so much, but I'm asking because this is not like, this is a whole new area and we all are aware that new houses are being built. We're established.
Right.
And
So that's a good thing. Candidly, I deal with a lot of projects in other cities that used to be farmland, right? And so when you're talking about field mice, it is like something out of, Fido Goes West, because what's happening is the whole field is raised, and so all of those animals have to scatter and go somewhere. You're in an in-field project, and candidly, I'm sure some of y'all have cats. That's the first place they go if they want to go find somebody. Yeah, and so there's good, and don't get me wrong, there's probably animals in there, maybe, I'm not sure, but that property has been mowed and those type of things and maintained, and so I think it's very minimal. And so when you're talking about the impact of even when we're putting in the road, the project really only has 2 entrances, right? We're talking about from Town East right? And we're talking about in Rustown. And so I think the impact is gonna be very, very minimal.
They still have to do for water and sewage.
Absolutely, and that's the stuff where he's referring to is when we're typically connecting to water and sewer, we're gonna have to connect to certain sections. That's where you may see a cone moved over. I don't anticipate or see anything where we would shut down any of the roads that you guys are currently using.
I'm sorry, this man's had his hand up for a while.
I've got two questions that are related. The first one is, what is your occupancy rate on any townhomes that you built?
Well, I mean, the project that we sold in Louisville that we occupied is 100% occupied right now. And we sold everything, right?
Okay.
We don't control, we don't have any of those as rentals, if you will. And then, so.
Do you have any restriction? Well, this isn't my second question, but to follow
What's
up
your-
on the first one. Do you have any restrictions over somebody buying the townhome and then renting it?
No, because it's an outright, so just like any, that happens everywhere you move, right? And so the answer is no, absolutely not. That's yes, sir, go ahead.
And the second question is, you mentioned that the price of the townhomes are gonna be $250,000, $275,000, somewhere in that under $300,000 market.
Yes, sir.
With the home prices being much less than that, how do you plan to fill the townhomes at such a higher price?
I mean, we've done our due diligence. I mean, we have a full marketing program. We spend a lot of money on marketing in North Texas. What we do is we drive customers to locations, right? Versus just trying to fill a good consumer base that's already in locally. We try and bring in a lot of consumers who are looking for product. There is not a lot of new product in North Texas under 300,000. It's not available. And so what we have is a lot of consumers, young families and those type of things. We push for, an active adult. It's not age restricted, but we push for that clientele as well too. And we try and drive them to the neighborhood. I think I have one house that's not sold in North Texas. I have a few in Houston. We build about 400 homes a year. So it's not as if we're just building 4 or 5.
And how long does it take you to sell out, like these units? How long do you expect it to take?
I think my goal is from the time we have the project approved, we have our streets, utilities, everything in, and I'm actually allowed to pull a building permit. Our goal is to hopefully be out in less than 12 months.
Okay, and that's fully implemented, built, and.
Well, no, let's clarify that. So when the next step here would be zoning, if we got approved for zoning, it's gonna take 3 to 5 months to get the engineering approved with the city. So basically,
I'm telling her just, hold on just a second.
and so once that gets approved, it basically says where the water is coming from, where the sewer's going, all that stuff. Once that's approved, it takes us typically about 3 to 6 months, This is a smaller project. It's not a very complicated project, so no more than 3 to 5 months to actually put the streets in and everything else, and then 12 months from there. To build the actual houses. And they're not all gonna be built at once. We're gonna build them in stages. I think there was a concern on absorption. What's gonna happen are there gonna be partially completed houses throughout the project? We're gonna build 2 or 3 buildings at a time. Depending how demand goes, if the demand is really high, we'll build them a lot faster, right? But we've done a lot of due diligence. We're very, very, very comfortable with this project as it stands.
And right now in North Texas, 250 to 275 is the hot spot in terms of what families are looking for.
How dangerous is it gonna be to these kids coming back and forth across Rustown and walking down that Rustown? All this construction going on.
Well, they're required to have construction barriers and keep the sidewalk open. Again, if there's any closure of the sidewalk, it'll be temporary.
And we have traffic coming in and out of the whole thing too.
Yes, sir, and then that's, again, a thing that they have to take care of, but, kids also cross the street every day as well, so there's a. Sure. But it'll be clearly marked and, again, the construction, will be aware of the fact that there is a school next to it, so any contractor out there is gonna protect himself from liability, so they're gonna be extra cautious. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so did you say these houses are gonna be 280,000?
That's basically what we're estimating at this point, yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is it to do with my property? Does it bring my taxes up? Because if you want the 250, then it just raises my price. Then that means my taxes is going up to pay for this.
And I don't typically get into specific house values, but I will say that one thing I always recommend for anybody when neighborhoods that we go into is make sure you have a homestead exemption. That limits what the county is gonna be able to jack up your house values, because at the end of the day, house values are going up. Okay, I mean, everywhere I go, I've never seen a county say, guess what, congratulations, your house values have now gone down. They're always gonna try and increase values, and so I always suggest for everybody to get a homestead exemption, because that limits and caps what the counties can raise the taxes on your values. But I don't have control over any of that. That's typically handled at the county level. We're just coming in, trying to add the best possible value. I will tell you, probably retail would probably increase it even more.
At a high price is what some of the houses are worth over here, especially some of the townhouses. You may not have a control over it, but you sure are making ours go up. I can't afford any more taxes, and so if you keep taxing me, I'll just have to lose my house.
It's not me. I promise you, I'm not the tax man, right? I'm just saying. And trust me, I get my tax bill from the city or from the county as well too, and I'm not happy about it. I'm just happy that I have a homestead exemption.
Don't try to make it fun of me, but.
I'm not, ma'am, I don't.
You coming in with this 250,000, and so some of the houses over here are 250,000, so that may raise the value on the house, of course it is, and so that means the taxes are gonna be raised because your value is gonna go up. It's not a good thing to me, because nobody's gonna come over there and buy a 250,000 house that 20, 30 years old, they can go over there and buy yours, but mine is gonna go up to 300 and something, and then my taxes go up. You know,
I will say that the Dallas County does have the ability and provides you the opportunity to protest any increase to the value of your home. And in these situations when there's new growth, and if your house value goes up, it can be taken care of.
go down there and try it.
I'm sorry.
It's mesquite taxes I pay too.
I think you're next. Yes, sir.
I have 1.5 questions, basically. What's the square footage of these properties you're talking about?
This, the question is the square footage of the properties, and so I think on these, we're gonna be probably around 1,800 to 2,000 square feet with the 2-car garage.
Okay, second question. What are you planning to put at the corner of Rustown and Town East? Is there gonna be anything that will obstruct the view from drivers?
No, sir. So what we've been requested by the city, and this is typically handled at the engineering or design level, because they don't want us to block, basically eyesight and those type of things. That section right there, right at the corner of Rustown and Town East, is gonna have the wall, but then going down Rustown, we don't currently have that masonry wall, and that's gonna be a park right there at that hard corner.
There will be one on Town East then, going all the way to Rustown?
Yes.
Anytime development comes in, especially we have our traffic engineers do a review. We have what's called a visibility triangle. And we make sure that that visibility triangle meets the state regulations for safety. So make sure that as you pull up to the intersection, you can see an adequate distance in order
I can.
to
What
avoid.
is that distance?
I can.
It varies, depends on it varies depending on the geometry of the intersection. So I can't tell you, but it should be, well, they're 20 feet back, but that's not the visibility triangle.
Yeah, it's already not good.
Yes, sir.
Those of you that are concerned about varmints and so forth, and I am too, mice, rats, whatever. Anytime you have a construction project of any kind going on anywhere in the Metroplex, you've just got to put up with that. You can do the best you can to control it, but it is a nuisance, but if there's going to be construction in progress for communities, that just happens. But you know, in due time, it settles down. The other question I have though is, about the project. What would be your anticipated sellout time? You know, up to say at least an 80% sellout.
So the question is basically 80% occupancy on the project, and so if we're taking, you know, 45 units, that would be 18 units off of that, so you're looking mid-30s. So we're taking, let's say, another 3 months for zoning and getting it through the city council, then another 6 months, 9 months. So I would anticipate 12 to 14 months, maybe 15 months, is from today. That's a guess, without really looking at a calendar.
I mean, when construction actually starts on the units. The streets are all in, and you're starting construction on the units, and whatever time you're saying it takes to build them, and I realize you'll start selling them as you build, right?
Right.
Okay, then what would be the projected time in your estimation as to when you'd reach 80% sales?
I mean, I'm guesstimating, you're putting me on the spot for a technical question candidly, but it could be, I would say from the time we pull our first building permit, maybe 9 months or so. I'm hoping, right? Market doesn't change, go a hard left, we don't have a pullback, a lot of different political things could happen. I'm thinking about 9 months.
Okay.
The wall we keep talking about, you're afraid is a security wall for the owners, correct? Part of the HOA is it's gonna be like a gated community?
It will not be gated, it will be public streets, right? And so we would, you know, candidly, my concern really is gonna be traffic from Rustown starts going through the neighborhood so people can get downtown east, right? And so that's just something we'll address later, but, you know, I don't, it's gonna be public streets.
Our concern is getting in our driveway to get to our garage. When you put that wall up right there at the alley.
We wouldn't have a wall at the alley.
You're gonna have a fence, but that alley is not wide enough to pull into your driveway without having to go into that field to make it into your driveway.
If you were living in one street over and you had another set of houses behind you.
It's probably a wider alley.
No, have another driveway to back up into.
They're all the same size.
Yeah, this will have driveways to, out that alley. And,
No, but we're not gonna be able to access this
There's gonna
driveway.
be a fence there.
well, there'll be driveways.
It's a rear entry product.
It'll be just like if you lived across the street.
We'll
or
have
an alley
access
over there.
on that same alley, right?
There will be garages on that alley side. So just to be
Oh, so
clear,
it's gonna
we
be
will
their
have alleys,
driveway.
we'll have alleys and alleys on both of these. Yeah.
Alright.
But we will have an
If I
alley,
may answer your
a
question there.
driveway, and a partial fence, right? And so, just to be very clear, this is a rear entry product, so our garages will be on the back side of the house. So we'll share an alley together.
It's gonna be all alley entrance garages.
That's correct.
Alley entrance.
Currently zoned, yes, sir.
Fences on
Are currently designed, yes, sir.
There's not gonna be a fence there then?
There will be sometimes you have a driveway, and then up to part of that, you're gonna have a fence, part of their backyard. Yeah, there will be, I'm sorry, one question, sorry. So you will have typically a driveway, and then next to it, you will have part of the backyard, right? And that will be fenced, so they will have a dog or whatever animal.
All the way down there.
No, sir, there will be a driveway. And so if you look at the back of on the second or third page, we show on this back side, you will see kind of cars representing the alleys and driving down them. These are most likely, if you're down the street, your house is on this back side. That's the old rendering, but it's pretty much the same concept. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Well, they both have
so in
alleys.
this picture, is there a double alley or what?
Yes,
Is that
ma'am.
what that is?
Or-
Oh, then that's
yeah,
fine.
It's not a double alley.
It's not.
Well, there's not two alleys connected, it's a shared alley, so.
You're not gonna widen the existing
No, ma'am.
alley?
No, that alley is owned and managed currently by the street. So,
They can be driving down our alley to get into their garage, right?
Right.
it's a shared, yeah, it will be driving down the shared alley. Yes, sir. Just like any other parts of the neighborhood.
Which is terrible. That's a city one.
And the idea is that we're,
But it's terrible. It is terrible.
You're gonna be 3 units together, right?
yes, ma'am.
So that's 3 garages.
Yes,
That's
ma'am.
going to have all these units sharing that one alley. So you really don't think it needs to be a little wider? I mean, that when you count how many you're going down there,
And that's something that can be addressed in the design stage, right? Because currently, right now, we have an extra wide street in the middle. I'd be happy to work with the city on kind of accommodating losing
well, I was
some.
just thinking, you know, that 3 times leaving 12 versus their houses, that's a whole lot more cars.
Definitely something we can look at doing the design. I mean, right now, what we're trying to do is go through zoning and saying, will you guys allow us to build townhomes? If we're talking about specific design restrictions on the street widths and things like that, I'm happy to work with the city and
Have you been down that alley?
Yes, ma'am, I actually have, multiple times.
I'm just asking because
Yes, ma'am.
it's.
And I grew up with an alley as well too, and I get it sometimes. Trust me, when I was a kid, when I learned to drive, I hit my neighbor's fence a couple times. All right, so-
And folks, and this is why we're having this meeting, so you can give this input and voice your concerns and give us some direction here.
Because, once again, so this phase that we're in right now is zoning, basically saying, do you guys want us to keep it as retail commercial? Or will you allow us to go in and put a townhome type zoning there? We can talk about, correct me if I'm wrong, but specific design parameters of the project once we go through what's called the engineering phase. And so we can move around certain things like that. We're happy to work with you guys.
A lot more traffic in the alley, right?
Yeah.
Inevitably, there's going to be more people using.
Well, you know where we go now, we meet somebody off of the field.
Yeah, we can get off in the field so that our alley go through, but now we can't.
Other neighborhoods, they resolve that issue as well, so it's, basically, you're gonna have more houses backing up to you, just so you don't have the field anymore, so. But we will verify to make sure that the alley is at the city standard width, and if there are some accommodations that we can make for the way that the driveways turn, they have newer standards than what your house has. And so they have their flares to allow for better turning movements, and we can look at and make some
My house
improvements.
is the only one got a gas meter on the corner.
Yeah, that's the problem
And
getting
that's
in our
our
drive.
We came very sharp with
The
that.
gas, which has been
Everybody
hit
else
several
is inside
times.
the fence, not why they put ours out there on there.
I feel bad for her. She's been holding that phone for 2 hours, it seems like, so.
We are at an hour time period, so at this point, I'm going to ask council members to say anything that they need to say. Again, I think all of us have agreed to be up here as long as you need us here to talk about anything and everything related to this project or things that you're experiencing in your neighborhood. So, but I do want to thank the developer. This part of the process is not required, and they have chosen to come out and talk to the neighbors to get input, and they've actually have done it twice. And so we feel that this is a very important part of the step to make sure that anything that a developer is putting into the neighborhood, that we do come out and get citizen input so we can build the best product that we can, or they can. And so, again, I want to thank the developer for doing that. This means a lot to us that they were willing to do that.
Alright, so for you guys that may have come in late, I'm Councilman Kenny Green. I'm over in District 2, which is the district that this project is going into. Here to my right, we have Councilman Robert Nicholas. He's over in District 3, which is just the other side of town. Nicholas. Okay. Then we have over here Bruce Archie over here, who's over the whole city. So a couple things on this. One, I want to say, I haven't been on the council that long, but for almost 10 years, I worked for the newspaper, and I covered a lot of developments going in our city. And what these guys have done is very rare as far as coming out, wanting to get your input. So I definitely give them kudos for that, because they want to be receptive, they want your information and your input. I've been talking to our city manager. This developer's gone above and beyond everything the city's asked of them so far. They've been willing to do. So definitely want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. They are willing to be a good partner. They're willing to be a good neighbor. Should they're developing their home, they're willing to be a good part of the community. A lot of you guys had questions that were a little bit more specific to the neighborhood. I can tell you, being on the council and knowing what these gentlemen here are all about as well, we're very committed to listening to your concerns. So should we have a problem, if we do approve this development, there are some problems, going on, whatever, you can reach out to any one of us. We're gonna be more than willing to answer your questions, try to address your concerns, and that doesn't just relate just to this development, but anything in general. We wanna be receptive to you guys, we wanna be accountable to you guys and try to help you any way we can. With that being said, I will let Mr. Nicholas come here and speak for a few minutes, and then I know I'll be hanging around as long as I need to for you guys.
You don't need a microphone to hear me, right?
We're leaving. Thank you guys very much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let's council member. Thank you. So, we've gone through another meeting, and I think y'all heard my concern. Let me describe why I'm concerned, why I'm kind of uptight about this particular deal. At Town East and Baker, who knows what's going up at Town East and Baker? Do you know what's going on? You know where Town East and Baker is, right? Y'all know where Town East and Baker is? You see that big, Town East and Baker's that way. All right, that was an empty field for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, you saw it fenced off with the green mesh fencing, and they had the bulldozers out there, and they were working out there. And what they're putting out there is a huge convenience store, gas station, laundromat, restaurant up there. I think, is it a Fox or is it something else that's going up there?
Well, it says for lease, so we don't know what's coming up.
And the fuel pumps are going to be 50 feet away from people's homes. And that was done absolutely by right. We didn't even know it was going in. We had no, and we couldn't have stopped it even if we had known. And on that corner, remember where that Motley and Town East, where the JTS awning was, that we finally got knocked down? Y'all know where that is? It's right on the corner, Motley and Town East. Right across from the Albertsons, right. So that's also getting a gas station convenience store there as well. And as well. And we can't stop it because it's zoned by right. And what I'm worried about, and I know I seemed kind of emphatic there for a little bit. This is what I'm scared of. I'm scared of people saying, I want my empty field to stay my empty field. Why are y'all doing this? Why are you putting stuff down there? We're not putting stuff out there. What happens, and what's happened in Mesquite, is that it is a very hot place for putting convenience stores and gas stations and
Dollar trees.
yeah, well, no, we cut that off. There hasn't been a Dollar Tree or a Family Dollar in a year and a half. We cut those off at the pass. We stopped those from coming in. But the point is that when we sit here and we say, I want that to stay an empty field. I'd love it to stay an empty field either. I would also. I'd love to have parks everywhere and empty fields everywhere and, the blue bonnets and everything. And I'm not trying to be funny or facetious, but when we as a council go, okay, we're going to stop X project, then another much worse project that's allowed by right comes in. And the reason I'm bringing up Town East and Baker is proof of exactly what I'm saying. And so a lot of times our decision-making process isn't, I would like acre-sized lot homes. That's never going to happen, and I can't ever make that happen for y'all. None of us can. So what we have to do a lot of times is pick between okay to prevent awful from happening. That's really the decision-making process oftentimes that we have. With growing the tax base, not because we want money and it's all about money, but growing the tax base smartly so that we don't need a whole bunch of apartments with 2,000 units, because then the police would be over there all the time and there'd be a lot of use of services, and our tax dollars get depleted when we build intensive uses. So what we have to do is look for uses that don't take a whole lot of our city services, but contribute tax dollars. Do not put a lot of cars on the streets. A townhouse use is pretty much the least intensive use, other than single family homes, for the number of cars. Right now, it's zoned office. You would have 10 to 30 times as many cars if an office development went there right now. And that would go on Town East and Rustown. This is about the least intensive traffic use that can possibly go there. So the reason I'm this way on this particular project is not that I desperately need everything to get developed, and boy, you know, I don't like empty fields. I just don't want us to make a mistake, say no to something that is not great, but is okay, and then have something 20 times worse that really harms the neighborhood come in instead. That y'all 5 years from now don't remember the decisions or lack of decisions that were made here, and you're cursing your city council for letting that office development get there on that corner. What would they think? Didn't they think of the kids? That's the thing that I worry about the most. And so townhouses isn't great. Are they ever going to go Section 8? I doubt it, because at 250 and above, those houses are too expensive to get rented for Section 8. That's just a fact of it. The higher price your home is, the less likely it can go Section 8. So it's very unlikely to ever do that because they're 250 and above. They generate a certain amount of taxes based on the home. So if y'all want more police, if you want your roads fixed, sir, I think the roads suck. I think we've done a terrible job of fixing the roads. If I could agree any more with you, I'd sign an affidavit to that effect. I agree completely. I can't get more money to fix the roads if everything is an empty field. I will. And so the point is that how do we get more tax dollars in without hurting the neighborhoods, without putting too many cars on the streets, without having a whole bunch of kiddos crossing McDonald to go to a gas station or a convenience store or a car rental place? And so those are the decisions that are before us. So I just don't want us to make a mistake and make false choices. The choice is not empty field or townhouses. You've already heard them say they're going to develop something there.
I'd rather it be an office.
Except
it's
it's,
open 8 to 5.
or it could be a car rental place.
Okay.
Office is allowed by car rental, and that could be open from, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Monday through Saturday.
And there's nothing that says an office has to close at 5 p.m.
Oh, no, there's nothing, but most of them aren't.
Right. And so, but also office uses do create a ton, by 10 to 20 to 30 times more than those townhouses are going to do. There's going to be office cars right when the kids are picking up and dropping off at McDonald. They're going to be out there on Town East and Rustown. They're also going to be going through your neighborhood to cut through to 30. And like I said, that's about 30 to 30 times as many trips per day in an office development like that than would be in the townhouse.
It's a legal question, but you probably know since you were at the street. Can you block an alley with your car?
No.
Is that legal?
No,
or
you
illegal?
cannot. It's against the law.
They do it all the time when they're picking those kids up from McDonald's.
Hopeless.
I've almost gotten hit twice
We have,
in my alley because of that.
yeah, and not to minimize the issue, we have that
It's
at a lot.
terrible.
It is. We have the same situation at Range, where a lot of the alleyways are blocked and people can't get in and out of their homes. Emerald, up and down that street, it's a nightmare to get down for about 40 minutes. We had the same at Canada, and we're working on pulling the cars off of there. We did some stuff. In every school, in every area, I don't think the schools were originally planned for as much traffic and as many cars as they are. And we are at capacity with a lot of our schools, which is why the Choice High School is so nice, because when we pull thousands of students out of these high schools, it decreases our population at North Mesquite and Poteet, where my youngest goes, and a lot of these schools as well. And that's why we're building middle schools, and that's why we're building elementary schools, to decrease the max capacity in these, because again, and if you want me to sign something, I will. You're absolutely right. Our schools have too many cars, too many people who don't obey the law, who second and third stack on Town East. I drive there all the time. I drive all these neighborhoods checking things out. And I'm tearing my hair out trying to figure out exactly what we can do to fix this, you know, without blocking the parents' ability to pick up their kiddos when they're trying to pick up their
Well,
kiddos.
I was blocking a school bus because I was trying to get down my alley when somebody was blocking the alley, and he's back behind me honking, and I'm like, where do you want me to go?
Right.
Mike, could I ask you something?
Yes, sir.
You were telling me that if they wanted to, if they didn't do the townhomes, and if they did do office or some kind of store or something, they could sell alcohol if they were closer to the alley. I know that there's a school across the street, but there's a certain amount of feet
That's
you
right.
have to be away from.
Yeah, I didn't hear the alcohol part.
Could
I'm
they,
sorry.
well, I'm just saying, could there be, if they did, have to move it back toward
500 feet limit, there's a 500-foot limit for the platted lot from a school. I
think it's parking lot to parking lot, isn't it, like sidewalk to sidewalk?
That's what, yeah, platted lot, that's the same, we're saying the same thing.
Okay.
That's right, so, I don't know what the exact distances would be. It would probably be prohibited in that first part near Rustown. I think that's too close to McDonald. I can't speak for all the way down on the east side, how far distance that is.
For mirror line cells, the measurements property line to property line.
Property, yeah,
So I don't think you could do alcohol cells on this lot because.
the whole thing?
I don't think
What
so.
if they, well, okay, so what if they replatted and they divided up the lots?
I would have to, I don't know the measurements.
You see what I'm thinking?
Albertson sells alcohol, and their parking lot is right across from the academy, and that's the reason that the little convenience store that's closed down now, they can't sell.
Well, I'm trying to think of how they could get around it too. And if they platted lots and subdivided, they might be able to do that, and so
That'd be worse.
right, and so that's what, you see what I'm worried about?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
This gentleman had a question.
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I came in late, so forgive me if you guys
That's all right.
saw this already. So what I'm hearing is that regardless of what project, 100%, something's gonna be developed in that.
Yeah, a man owns it and he wants to sell it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what they're, and let me say this, that's what they're telling us.
Well, then why don't we put in a North Mesquite police, substation right there? Can we do that? The city can buy it.
Come on, Mr. Mayor. Can we have a police
That's what I
substation?
want.
We don't own the property.
But you buy it. He's gonna sell it.
You don't have the
So what?
Tell me how much taxes you're gonna raise to do that. It would be a very heavy expenditure.
I don't want you to raise mine.
Right now, frankly, ma'am, right now, our focus is to get more guys and gals on the street, not to build a new facility.
Yeah, if I have to decide between a substation and a police car, I'd rather have an officer in a police car any day.
What was the thought? Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with you sharing
No.
your ideas.
Okay, it was just
Yeah,
a thought.
please.
So just a little background on me. For almost a year, I worked for our police department as a dispatcher, okay? So I can tell you this straight up. We could have 1,000 police stations in the city and it wouldn't do any good because the officers are never there.
I know, right?
They're only there
Right.
whenever they go to their squad meeting, get ready to go on the street, when they go back to do reports to go home for the day. They're never there. They're out on the streets. They're out in those squad cars. Those are their offices. So substations really have a hollow value. That's the reason why we don't have one at the mall anymore, because it doesn't really matter. They're out on the street. They're in our communities. That's where they are. So a substation, the reason why cities like Dallas have to have them is because the city's so large that it wouldn't make sense to go all the way back to a central location. But you don't want these guys to have those areas. You want them out in the street.
But it's a good discussion to have. It is good for us to talk through it to see, but yeah, yes, ma'am.
I'm going back to the gas stations and stuff. And I had said, I don't think you're here, but, I mean, I understand, you can tell me, like, when I put my building in, it had to be 5 feet from the fence, I had to paint it the same color of my house. I can have X amount of animals, I can have only so many people living in my house. Why can't we fix the convenience stores, the gas stations? I mean, do we need one every corner? I mean,
We have a moratorium on convenience stores that are coming up on Tuesday. So your very question, the answer is yes, we can deal with it, and what we're gonna look at on convenience stores is a whole slew of ordinances to make them safer. Cameras, security guards, lighting, all of those things that would make it much more difficult to rob them and much more difficult for the kids to hang out at them in all hours of the day or night.
And not on every corner.
Right.
And it's when you were saying we have no control, I'm not trying
Right
to yell
now.
or anything, it's kind of like, but again, you can tell me when I put that building in, I gotta paint it to match my
We know
house.
at the moment, but we're working to get there to have more control.
Yeah.
So what happens if you get control and this guy, we don't do the townhouses? He couldn't paint them.
I have an answer to that. You ready for this? And I was thinking about that a lot too, and I appreciate that specific question. We cannot regulate land so that nothing can go there. When we do that, then we pay for it. It's called it's regulatory condemnation or inverse condemnation. It's a couple words people invent, so it sounds really smart. But we end up shilling out several $1 million for the property when we suppress their ability to do something on the property. So at some point, we have to allow people to develop something. But like, and I'm not trying to be dismissive or funny at all, but it's kind of like the Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi. You know, yeah, you got, well, and you got to deflect the blows so that one doesn't land straight on you. And that's a lot of the time what land use decisions are. You know, we know something really bad's coming, so deflect it and get something decent. Because, again, we would all like X, Y, and Z, but the market isn't doing that here. It's not producing exactly what we'd love to have. So instead, we have to make choices based on what's the best option, what's the best way to direct it, so that I want to eventually lower everybody's taxes. I want to cut people's taxes. These sort of developments versus an office or retail, we are overbuilt in retail. Those things drain our tax dollars. Apartments drain our tax dollars. And so we have to make wise decisions about what we're allowing in and what we have happen so that we can eventually lower your taxes. Your taxes are too high. Your taxes are too high because we let a bunch of crap in here for forever and we weren't making wise decisions.
What he said, if you're gonna build as they sell, what if they don't sell very many? What happens to the rest of the land? I mean, I'm just wanting to know, do we now face, here goes the gas station?
No, because once they zone it residential, we're not letting
But you
them,
do a spot zoning, someone could come in.
we're not gonna let them. We're not gonna let it go back. That's the whole point. We got somebody who wants to make this residential. I am thrilled that they're taking it away from office and commercial, which is much more devastating to the neighborhood. And I'm like, wow, this is an opportunity. Let's take this opportunity.
I just don't want a bunch of empty, I don't want to build and like what the old hospital used to be. You know, it was.
I agree.
It sat there and, you know, you wait, and next
I
thing you
agree.
know is windows are being knocked out and.
I agree completely. Yes, ma'am.
What determines whether if it gets rezoned?
Us.
Well, I know, but is it just whatever y'all decide?
Yeah,
Or
three of the four votes from you and then vote.
three or four votes?
4 votes. It has to be 4. At least 4. So if 4 of us vote to rezone it, it gets rezoned.
So all y'all are for it though, is what it sounds like.
I didn't say that.
You don't have to.
No. No, what I said was.
It just sounds like it, but.
No, what I said was, I'll do whatever y'all want done. If you want us to kill it, I'll kill it.
I'd love for you to kill it, but you just said you'd rather have it.
I think that's a mistake,
rezoned.
though. Yeah, I'll make a mistake for you. How's that?
Can you put it in writing?
I just said it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
The vote that the council's gonna make on the rezoning is to rezone it from the current retail.
Office to a planned development district for residential. To freeze it on just this.
Limited to townhomes?
Yes.
Or single family?
It will not be apartments. We will exclude apartments as a possible use. Correct.
And that's only until a future council may decide something else. But
Right. Although if they build it, it's gonna be awfully hard for them to change that.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
Exactly. So if it gets built, if it gets changed and built and done, then it's over.
Yeah, I don't see it changing for 30, 40, 50 years, correct? At least.
I'm just concerned about making, I know the city of Rowlett made a big mistake in their property that they had sold to a.
Oh, the Crystal Cove?
Yes.
Yeah, they sure did.
And I don't want to see the city of Mesquite make any kind of.
We'll restrict it so it won't go to something else.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, one of the things that we talked about, next door about this since the last meeting is a lot of people are concerned with the schools and what this is gonna do to the school. That was one of our main, McKenzie's already overcrowded. So you're putting in townhomes with bringing in other children. You know, we're not just saying we want a vacant lot. We have a reason for saying, if you're gonna put in homes there, that affects our school.
Yes.
So we're not saying we don't want anything on there, we're saying.
And Robert Seward's with the school board. And he's aware of the number of kids that would typically be generated by this development and the capacity for those schools, and I'll get you in just a second. What do you think?
This development will be approximately 17 kids on average, because it's about 0.4 per townhome. If you have a single family home, it's usually 0.7 kids per house. So it's gonna balance out to about the same amount of kids if you build houses there. So it's not gonna impact our school here at McKenzie or McDonald very much, because those schools are built, we built and added to them to help with the capacity and development in this area. Plus, you always got a fluctuation in the neighborhoods. You'll have students that go down as the neighborhoods get older, the people in those homes. And then when the young ones come back in, you'll have more kids come in. So we've tried to build it to where we can have that fluctuation in the amount of kids that come in through the neighborhood. So we don't see a big impact to the schools over in this area.
I understand, but what we see living here, there's a house in my neighborhood that has 6 adults and 12 kids. Now, we're single family, but you know, not all single families are single family homes.
Well, that,
I mean, we know that.
I'm gonna address that in just a minute.
Okay, but I'm saying, so when you say you're gonna build these townhomes and it's 4 bedrooms and we all go, wait a minute, you know.
1 kid per bedroom.
Okay, 1 kid per bedroom. Okay, no more than that, just 1 kid per bedroom.
Bruce, you gonna address the regulation on that?
Well, but can you see what our concern is?
Absolutely.
Because you're saying there's gonna be this amount, if you're going by realistic, what am I trying to say? Data, but let's get real. That could be more than that in these, and that brings it up.
We just had a policy retreat for this council this last weekend to talk about the difficult elephant in the room type issues, such as occupancy challenges like you're talking about.
Right.
They're not easy. There's always situations where, well, that's my cousin, but we have our legal department there, when we're telling them, we want you guys to dig deep and help us find ways to address these issues where it's not legitimate. Aunt Flo had to come live with us, or Johnny and Susie, who are a new couple, just can't live with us for 6 months while they get on their feet. But people abusing that system, we are working on addressing those occupancy challenges.
Good.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You have one
And
first.
parking.
Yes, ma'am.
The project we're building over here on Gus Thompson, how many units are there?
221.
And where will all those children go to school?
They will be spread out, North Mesquite, and then, what's the elementary school right there off of?
Tosh?
Tosh, right. That'll go to Tosh and then McDonald, correct.
So this is minimal compared to what they're doing over there.
That's correct. That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm gonna speak for her. Okay.
Yes.
We're talking about 27 housing, right? Like in the first line, and then there's gonna be the other, where the 40, so it'll be 45 together, right? But then
Total.
our houses are what, like 10, not 10, 12? And then it's gonna be 27 that way. And then if you do 3 per house, 3 driveways, man, it's gonna be hard for us to get out. And then,
Yep.
and then.
Exactly, that's what we've been saying.
And I carry the sort of time playing at the
Yep.
back of the alley.
Yeah,
And
in the alley
with
too,
all
yeah.
that traffic
And
there,
I
what
go,
He's our neighbor.
to construction is better for us, maybe parking for the school, for the, church.
Well,
you
the
buy
school
it.
district doesn't own it.
Yeah, because when it's, time for the, for games, they parking in all this place.
We don't own that land, neither does the school district.
Yeah, I know.
So we can't make it into parking for the school. I mean, I understand what you're saying, and that's the, and we have this all over Mesquite, where, if we could make it into parking, or a park, or, some, I'm sorry? Right.
You got one
But
right
then,
over there.
no, and I know that.
If we own the land, we might could do that. We don't own the land.
Yeah, we don't own the land, and so we can't make it into a park because we don't own that. That's the problem with that.
So because you don't own the land, then you can't put any kind of, there is the easement for the city in the alleys.
Yes.
It's, I think 2 feet or something.
That's right.
So there's nothing that you could do as far as some kind of act of the council
They should have their own.
to do something for the people that are gonna be affected the most by it.
For their alleyway?
That's a lot of driveway, free driveway
alleyway?
right behind your house.
No, that's.
Is there any way to move it up, or?
That's a good point. So,
Seems like the
you've
only
heard they've got concern about their alleyway, and so, well, let me address this. It sounds like you're concerned about the alleyway and crowding coming off of your alleyway in the back there. So, that's part of what these meetings are, so we can hear your concerns, and let's see if there's something that we can do to help accommodate the traffic in that particular alleyway. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but there may be a way of doing something with the alley to help this particular process out, to help y'all that are gonna be adjacent to it. It's not a,
Yeah, widen it.
yeah, I don't wanna say yes for sure they could widen it, but that's something that we need them to look into. And I will tell you, if it could with minimal impact to them, why wouldn't we ask them to do that, right, to help accommodate y'all?
When he spoke, I'm sorry, that he had space, like in the middle, something like that, that's what he said.
No, they're making a road down the middle.
Well, and he said,
But he said he had the space.
and he said,
He can.
if we can make it happen, he's open to trying to work that out too. So-
Right.
So we're listening.
So that's a key thing that we need to remember and take back to see if there's any give to widen that alleyway a little bit more, to see if there's something that we can do for that.
Didn't you
That's
say there
exactly.
was space on the road in front of the houses that they could maybe,
I didn't hear that, but it's very possible they said that. I was probably all worked up about something else. Anyway.
I'm
yes.
going back to the first meeting, it was originally gonna be a gated community. An alley.
No.
They had their own alley.
No, it wasn't.
Never a gated community.
Not a
It's right, it's like they have their own alley.
I don't remember a gated community. I don't wanna say you're wrong, because I just don't remember that. That's all.
The alley that you're referring to backs up to Townhome Boulevard, so they are gonna have to build another alley.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
But they were always going to use the alley that's existing. They just don't have enough room to build another alley there.
Yeah, they're 20 foot on the other side, but 18 on the houses.
So let's see what we can do with that. I agree. It's not an unreasonable request to look and see what we could do for them. All right, yes, sir, and then we're gonna let the mayor get up. Yes, sir.
not necessarily.
I didn't say that. I don't know that. Okay.
Everybody, please, this gentleman speaking.
They make money quicker when they sell them quicker. They're not gonna take their time unless they have to. Well, only if the economy slows down. Do I think they don't sell all those homes as quickly as possible? Yes, sir. All right, Mayor, come on.
So, I want to thank you all for being here, for coming out on a cool winter evening when you could be doing lots of other things with your families or making a living. But because you care about your neighborhood, you care about your hometown, you came out tonight to talk about how to improve things and how to not let things go downhill. And that's exactly what we're about. And this council, philosophically, deeply believes that the people should always have a say and an input on what happens. We do not want to be in the business of governing by an attitude of, we're elected, we're smart, we know what needs to be done, y'all sit down and be quiet. We're not gonna operate that way. Never, never, never again. So tonight was to make sure that you do get some input, that you see the whole big picture. And I think my two colleagues said very well tonight that we're faced with a decision. The Planning and Zoning Commission, we as a council are faced with a decision. Do we do something that hopefully will be a nice residential development that will be a complement to the area? It may not be the perfect idea we all have for that spot, versus another convenience store, another office building, of which we don't need either one of. But you did hear we're talking about addressing the occupancy issues, and it won't be simple or easy. We're talking about addressing having way too many convenience stores that have owners that unfortunately sometimes aren't interested in families coming to get some bread and milk and a Pepsi, but thugs hanging out doing things they shouldn't be doing. So we're going to address that issue just like we did with the dollar stores when there were just too many dollar stores popping up everywhere. So we're doing those things and trying to figure out the parking and the occupancy issues, because you told us you're concerned about those things. And most of us, I can tell you, on this council, drive neighborhoods and walk neighborhoods on a regular basis. I am in neighborhoods all throughout this town, north, west, east, and south. I touch, feel, and smell, if you will, what's going on. And so tonight, again, was to make sure that you get a say, you get some input, so we can go back and make good decisions about what you've told us, what your concerns are. It's probably never exactly what everybody wants. We want to make sure that we're listening to you because you are the boss. So I thank you all for coming out. We'll stick around to answer more questions and chat, but I hope hope you feel like this was helpful to you. Mr. Seward, thank you for coming out tonight to represent the school district, and God bless you all. Thank you.